Today we're going to be working on a pair of rock climbing trousers that are specifically designed for outdoor bouldering. You don't have to be a rock climber to follow along on this video. I think the design is going to be super cool and you can wear it wherever you want, so feel free to follow along if you want to make these trousers too. I'm going to be making the bisque trousers in the wide leg view, but I am going to be making a few modifications so that it better suits my needs. I've already gone through and cut out all the pieces in the size that I want to make, and I've pre-washed my fabric. I also added 3 additional pieces, which includes knee patches and a sliver of fabric that's going to attach from the back pocket to the side seam. The fabric that I chose is the Japanese cotton twill from the Salt Lake Society in the color charcoal, and I picked up 3 yards. Because of the modifications that I'm making, I probably could have picked up an extra half a yard, but I'm making do with what I have, and I think it's going to work out fine. I'm going to be adding front knee patches, which should help with durability, especially when knee barring outside. And then the piece of fabric that's going to attach from the pocket to the side seam is a good place to hang my carabiner, and my carabiner holds my car keys, so that should just be an easy way for me to access my car keys from my pants rather than having to dig through my climbing bag for them. I also chose to make the slant pockets out of the wool blend, which should help keep my hands warm on cold climbing days. Additionally, I plan to add rivets on the back pockets and the knee patches, and I'm going to cinch the wide leg at the ankle with elastic. That way the extra fabric isn't getting in the way when I'm climbing. If you're not a rock climber, these pants still have some really great details and you can truly wear them wherever you want. I'm super excited to make these, so let's get into it. Okay, so here are all the pieces that we have. We have our front 2 pieces here, our back 2 pieces over here, as well as the 2 pockets that are going to go on the back side. We also have these pieces here, which are going to go in front of the pocket, and then we also have these 2 pieces that I cut out as the front knee patches. This is the front pattern piece with the knee patch that I freehanded. I referenced a story highlight from my friend Layla on Instagram to create this front panel, and I'll have it linked on the screen for you. I also haven't cut out the extra loop that's going to attach the back pocket to the side seam because I'm not sure how long it needs to be yet, and I want to figure out the thickness as well. One other thing that I'd like to note is that I made all of the notches on the pattern pieces, and for the places where there were dots, I put pins instead. Here's what they look like. They just prevent me from having to make visible dots with chalk that might rub off when I'm moving the fabric around. I prefer this method, but you can do whatever suits you. We're going to start by preparing the front pleats. There are 3 notches at the top of the front piece. We're going to take the outer notches and match them together with the right sides facing each other. Once the 2 notches are matched up, we'll sew a straight stitch from the notch all the way down to the dot. I'm going to take this ruler and use it as a guide so that I know that I'm sewing a straight line. Once that seam is in, we're going to open the front pant leg and we're going to press this dart towards the center front. You're going to press from the top all the way down to the bottom stitch and then an extra 4 inches. Next, we're going to focus on the knee patches. We don't have to worry about this side here because it's going to match up with the side seam. All the other edges need to be folded under about 1/2 inch and pressed down in place. Once those edges are all folded under, we're going to pin down the knee patch. Start by matching up this side seam and then make sure everything lays nice and flat before pinning it down. Now that all of our pins are in place, we're going to stitch really close to this edge here with normal thread, and then we're going to switch out our thread to top stitching thread, and we're going to do a double top stitch all the way around this area. Don't forget to change out your thread to top stitching thread now. Take your time when you're top stitching and you'll thank yourself later so that you don't have to do a ton of unpicking. This part can be a little bit tedious, but I find it really rewarding when you have beautiful top stitches. Once your first row of top stitching is done, you can leave it at that, but I'm going to do double top stitching because I like the way that it looks. Okay, here's what the knee patch looks like. I'm really pleased with how this top stitching came out, and now we're going to move on to the front pockets. Take the pocket lining and the pocket bearer and match up the notch at the bottom here and at the top here. Then you're going to sew a straight stitch in place and we'll fold it open so that it looks like this. Don't forget to switch your thread so that you're no longer using top stitching thread. After you've sewn your straight seam, bring your pocket over to your iron and iron open the pocket bearer. Here's what the pocket looks like now. We're going to edge stitch along here, and then we're going to base this side seam in place so that it becomes one pocket piece. Don't forget to switch your thread so that you're no longer using top stitching thread. After you've sewn your straight seam, bring your pocket over to your iron and iron open the pocket bearer. Now that the pocket bag is completely prepared, we're going to align the slant edge of the pocket here. We're going to sew a straight stitch from the dot all the way to the bottom at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once that straight stitch is in place, we're going to bring it over to our ironing board and we're going to press the seam open. Now we're going to go back to our sewing machine and we're going to understitch through all of the layers from the right side. Now that the pocket bag is attached, we're gonna French seam this edge here. You'll start by taking the pocket bag and matching these edges here. Next, we're gonna sew a straight stitch close to this edge, and then we're gonna flip it inside out, and we're gonna enclose that seam with another seam that's just a little bit taller than it. Let's start by sewing a straight stitch from this edge to this edge. Now that your stitch is in place, we're gonna fold the pocket bag inside out. Now we're gonna take it over to the ironing board and we're gonna press this seam down. Next, we'll take it back over to our sewing machine and we'll enclose that raw edge with a straight stitch. The French seam is done and the raw edge is now completely enclosed. We're gonna move over to this piece here and we're gonna align this straight edge with this straight edge here. We'll pin this in place and then sew a straight stitch from the top down to the dot. After you've sewn this piece down, we're gonna open up the front pant leg like this and flatten everything out so it looks nice. Then we're gonna take our work over to our ironing board and we're gonna press this seam down. This seam is all pressed and pretty, and now we're gonna align the side of the pant to the pocket bag and we're gonna sew a straight stitch really close to the edge here. The pocket is almost completely done, but next we're gonna baste this piece down 4.5 inches from the top. I recommend using a ruler to measure out 4.5 inches from the top, then pinning the pocket down and basting it. All right, both front panels are fully prepped now, so I'm gonna take them over to my serging machine and I'm gonna overlock the crotch, the inner thigh, and the outer seam. Now that all these edges are serged, we're gonna pin together these two front crotch pieces and then sew a straight stitch from the top to the bottom at 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now bring your work back to your ironing board and press the seam allowance towards the right back. Then take your work back to your sewing machine and top stitch it down. I'm gonna change back to my brown top stitching thread and I'm gonna do 2 rows of stitches. Here's what the front of the pants look like now that they're completely prepped. The top stitching looks really nice and I'm super happy with how it's coming out. I'm gonna end up adding rivets in a few spots, but I'm gonna wait until the trousers are almost completely constructed to do that because I wanna make sure that I don't accidentally put rivets too close to the side seams. Take your back panels and find the notches. Then match these outer notches with right sides facing and pin in place. Now you're gonna use your dots as a guide to sew the dart. Then you'll pivot from this dot all the way down to this dot. When you get to the end here, you don't need to back tack. You're just gonna tie up the thread with your fingers and snip it off. Now bring the pant legs over to the ironing station and press the dart open with the seam allowance towards the center back. The dart is in and now we're gonna focus on the pockets. Start by serging each edge of the pocket. This will ensure that you don't have any fraying happening inside the pockets once you wear your trousers. We're gonna start by folding and pressing the top edge of the pocket piece by 1/2 inch. Then we're gonna fold and press again another 1 inch. Bring the pocket back to your sewing machine and top stitch the top down. Now that the top stitch is in place, bring your pockets back to your ironing board and fold and press each edge in by 1/2 inch. I'm also gonna fold up the corners of the pocket by 1 inch, just because I like the detail of the shape. Now that the pocket is completely pressed, we're gonna pin it to the back panel. Line up the corners with the dots and pin in place. When you're pinning, do your best to smooth out the fabric underneath so that it lies flat. Now before we stitch on the pocket, we're gonna make the loop that attaches the pocket to the side seam. This is where I'm gonna attach my carabiner. I cut a strip of fabric 2 inches wide, then I folded both edges in 1/2 inch, and then folded again so that the edges meet. Now I'm gonna take it over to my sewing machine and do a double row of top stitching. Okay, I finished the strap and this is what it looks like. I put a pin in the fabric and this marks where the top of the knee patch will be once the side seams are sewn together. I've chosen to line the loop up with the corner of the pocket and where I put this pin. Now I'm gonna do a double top stitch all the way around the pocket. Both of the pockets on the back pant legs are now on. Now we're gonna take them over to the serger and we're gonna serge the inner crotch, the outer seam, and the inner thigh seam. All of the edges are serged and now we're gonna lay the pieces on top of each other and we're gonna pin them together at this inner seam. Now that the pins are in, we're gonna sew a straight stitch at 1/2 inch. Bring your work over to your ironing board and press the seam allowance towards the right front. Then bring your back pant legs back to your sewing machine and top stitch in place. Don't forget to switch out to top stitching thread, and I'm going to be doing 2 rows of stitching again. The top stitching is in and looks really nice. Now both the back panels and the front panels are completely prepped. Next, we're gonna join the front and back panels by pinning the front inseam to the back inseam. I like to start at the crotch seam to make sure that everything lines up nicely, and then I'll pin together at the ankles and the notches, and then I'll stretch the back inseam evenly between the notches and pin everything in place. Now that the pins are in, we're gonna bring our work over to our sewing machine and sew a straight stitch at 1/2 inch seam allowance. Bring your work over to your ironing board and press the inseam toward the front of the pants. Bring your work back to your sewing machine and top stitch through all of the layers. Again, I'll be doing a double row of top stitching with top stitching thread. Okay, if you've gotten this far, take it in for a second and then let's move on to the side seams. We're gonna pin both of the side seams together and we're gonna sew at 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now take your pants over to your ironing board and press your side seams towards the front of the pants. The directions say to press the seams towards the back, but I'm pressing them towards the front because of where I'm putting the rivets. I'm going to take my pants over to my serger and I'm going to overlock the ankles and the waistband. Doing this will just make the pants easier to work with moving forward so that nothing's fraying. Make sure that when overlocking, all the darts and seams are still pressed in the correct direction. Now it's time to assemble the waistband. We're going to bring our pants over to our ironing station and flip them inside out. The pattern instructions say to press the top waistband down 1/2 inch and then press again another 2 1/4 inch. However, I'm going to press down about 1/4 inch and then 2 1/2 inches so that I have room for double top stitching to keep my stitching consistent throughout the pants. Now bring your pants over to your sewing machine and top stitch the waistband in place. Make sure that you leave a 4-inch gap at the center back seam so that you can pull the elastic through the waistband. Once your top stitching is in, this is what it should look like with 4 inches of gap in the back. Now we're going to flip the pants over to the front and we're going to unpick the basting stitches that we made earlier. Now that that's all done, we're going to grab our 2-inch elastic and we're going to put it through the waistband. My elastic might look kind of funny, but that's just because I didn't have enough 2-inch elastic, so I made do with what I had. I'm going to be using this tool here, which is called a bodkin. I'm going to start by pushing this piece all the way to the very end and it'll open them up. Then we're going to pinch the edge of the elastic with the bodkin and push that piece all the way up so that it's nice and tight. Now this is going to go inside the waistband and we're going to use the tool to pull the elastic all the way through the waistband. I find bodkins way better than using safety pins because safety pins can open when you're pulling elastic through the waistband. The bodkin is also super inexpensive, so I'd recommend purchasing one because it'll make your life significantly easier and your sewing more efficient. I'll have one linked in the description if you're interested in checking it out. Once you've pulled the elastic all the way through the waistband, hold both the edges together with a pin and then go ahead and try them on and make sure that the elastic is where you want it to be. Once you've done that, you're going to go over to your sewing machine and you're going to zigzag stitch the elastic together. I'd recommend doing a few rows and then chopping off the rest of the elastic. Now that the elastic is fully together, we're going to finish our top stitching around the waistband, making sure to not accidentally top stitch through the elastic. And then once that's done, we're ready to move on to rivets. We're going to use this kit to put on the rivets. I've used it before and I really like it, so I'll have it linked down below for you. When I purchased it, it was less than $10 and it comes with 240 rivets. I'm going to put rivets at the top of the slant pockets, the tops of the knee patches, as well as both top pieces on the pocket and the corner of the pocket that has the loop. I'm going to explain how to do it once and then do all of the rest off camera. You'll need a rivet kit and a hammer, and I also like to use this thick leather scrap on the back side of the rivet so that I don't damage the surface that I'm working on. We're going to do the top of the slanted pocket together. I put the pocket on top of the leather and I move the rest of the pant out of the way so I don't accidentally make a hole through it. We're going to use this tool first, which cuts out a little hole in the fabric. Put the tool down where the rivet's going to go and hammer in place. Here's what that hole looks like. Now we're going to take the top of the rivet and put it through the hole. Then take the back rivet piece and sandwich your fabric. Now we're going to grab this tool, put it on the back side of your rivet and face it down on the leather. Then take this tool and put it on the top of the rivet and hammer the rivet in place. Now your rivet is nice and secure and it looks beautiful. Go ahead and put on all your rivets the same way you did with this one. The last thing we're going to work on is the adjustable cuff. I'll be using this and an elastic cord which came together in a set. I'll also be using a lighter so that the edges of the cord don't fray. I'm going to start with the inside leg seam and sew a small buttonhole. Once the buttonhole is finished, we're going to go over to our ironing board and press the cuff up so that the serged edge will be hidden. Then I'm going to press it up one more time about 3/4 inch. Now we're going to bring our pant leg back to the sewing machine and we're going to sew a straight stitch all the way around the cuff. I put one side of the cord through the buttonhole and I maneuver the cord through the tube that we're creating while making sure not to stitch through the cord. Once you get close to the end, take the other end of the cord and push it through the buttonhole. Then finish your seam. Now that your seam is done, you're going to attach the slider through both sides of the cord. Then you're going to tie a knot with the end of the cord. Clip any of the excess cord and use your lighter to burn the fraying edges. This will keep it from continuing to fray. And that's it. Your pants are done. Here's what they look like on, and I'm super proud of how they turned out. The pockets are especially cozy since they're lined with wool, and all the top stitching and rivet details give the pants a really professional look. They're going to be perfect for outdoor bouldering on cold days. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below, and be sure to use the hashtag ClimberSewist if you make these for your climbing wardrobe. If you liked this video, you'll probably be interested in the sports bra that I'm wearing that I also made. Click the link on the screen to watch the tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one.